I think it has to be getting on for 2 years now that I've actually had a proper Gibson Les Paul in my life, and for the majority of this time, it's kind of just sat in the cupboard, goading me and daring me to sell it. And I've been on the fence about this. I've had it on eBay once. I've taken it off. I've made videos about how the guitar in particular has sort of been confusing to me. So I wanted to do a video here, kind of talk about, I guess, why I feel like maybe I don't even need a Les Paul at all.
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
One of the things I think as we start to mature into guitar playing, and this is something that I've spoken to my buddy David Beebe about this idea of like having, one of each of the kind of key guitars. I've definitely spoken to Keith about this, about like having there being these certain types of guitars which are kind of archetypal, and the things that we associate with, the majority of guitar playing. So the Les Paul would be one of those, a Stratocaster would be another, a Telecaster, SG, ES335, right? Those are kind of maybe they cover potentially even the majority of recorded music on guitars to some extent. Let me know what I've missed there. Of course, there are notable guitars that do not fit into those brackets, but it's kind of like that covers an awful lot of guitar music. The Les Paul for me was important as a kid because I kind of grew up idolizing Thin Lizzy and Gary Moore. Before I got to the state where I'd have been able to afford a Gibson guitar, though, I had started down the slippery slope of like shred guitar and got into Dream Theater, Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, the types of players that you rarely, if ever, see playing a Les Paul. And yeah, then got into Strats kind of after university. Maybe I should do a video talking about my who cares. Anyway, this one I ended up buying because my buddy David Beebe, we found a 60s guitar much like this, 2002 Les Paul, and it was local. I went and picked it up. His needed a bit of work in terms of the frets and stuff, but the guitar itself, I think, had a way nicer top than this. But it had a 60s neck. I had it in mind that I'd quite like a 50s neck. Lo and behold, soon after that, this one showed up. I got this one off of James, a Welsh guy. If you're watching, James, all right? You probably got married by this point. Anyway, so what's happened since then? I guess what you're probably familiar with this, but when you're thinking about buying something like this, which is kind of a bit iconic in some ways, about to your mind at least, and maybe you don't have much experience actually playing a Les Paul as much as you do looking at them and looking at them on eBay and looking at them on Reverb and Peach guitars and all that sort of stuff, you kind of get it in your mind that this guitar is going to be something, you know, that changes you in some way, I feel like. And you spend so much time kind of just browsing eBay, looking for the right Les Paul that someone might be selling. And that is one of the things that I've liked about keeping it, because it kind of sees a lot of other guitars out the door as it has Gibson on the headstock. And that's about the main reason that I've kept it. I feel like I do quite like the way it looks. I do quite like the way it sounds. I quite like the way it plays. And I do feel like I play a little bit differently on it. Like, certainly some of the 3-note per string legato stuff is kind of even easier on this guitar due to the shorter scale length. You can get slightly bigger stretches, but also you've got a reduced kind of string tension relative to a Strat. And with the top wrap as well, you've got more of that. The thing with the Les Paul really, though, is that in particular these days, and certainly through the Norlin era, I was speaking to, I think, Mike, and he had a Norlin era Les Paul which was like £15.5, if you could believe that. And yeah, anyway, that's absolutely bonkers. I think he said he tried to gig it once and it destroyed his back. But this one weighs far less than that. It's like £9.5, which is still, you know, when you're used to gigging a Strat, it's like an extra or so heavier than your Strat that you might be used to gigging. So there is a significant change in weight, and particularly if you are gigging with these for 2 hours. Now, what I think through this video I've kind of shown myself is that this doesn't have the same pickups as my ES335, and even so, I feel like the ES335 is doing pretty much all of the things that I'm liking the Les Paul for, but with less weight. If I took this scratch plate off, I think it would be an even more similar playing experience. That's like the one thing where that feels a bit closer. I could take that off. And not only that, I feel like the ES335 is a bit more versatile. Now, this might be somewhat sacrilege, especially given that I'm not playing authentic with this. This is just a Tokai, but it is a Nitro Tokai. I kind of like the way it looks as well. I think the Les Paul, for me, looks-wise, I think is a fantastic looking instrument, but I feel like in terms of weight and stuff, I think the ES335 wins out for me. And let me know if you feel like they sounded similar or not. Did you prefer the way one sounded or not? The Les Paul has Monty's underwound paths in it, and the Tokai just has standard whatever the Tokais have. That reason enough to get rid of the Les Paul? You know, like, I've got a guitar quite similar. What's changed since I bought the Les Paul is that I've got now like a nearly 19-month-old daughter running around, probably aiming at one point or another to snap this headstock, and space is more of a factor, and having lots of guitars is no longer as desirable to me for some reason. And yeah, if I'm going to be ever getting to the point where I have significantly less guitars than I do right now, then there's sometimes going to have to be, I think, a fairly difficult choice about a guitar that I quite like, but maybe that I don't keep, because someone else might really like it. At the moment, it doesn't get loads of play from me, and Joe Bonamassa recently kind of talked about that being a thing with vintage guitars. You know, this is not a vintage guitar, it's not really even a special guitar, but still the idea of just having a guitar sat somewhere not being played very often is in some ways a little bit sad to me. And Joe Bonamassa was saying, you know, the idea of these vintage instruments really is that someone somewhere is playing them, which of course, if you've got thousands and thousands and nearly millions to spend on a, you know, posh guitar, vintage guitar, then you might have a point. For the rest of us, we'll have our 2002 Les Paul standards. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do I sound any different playing it? My normal tone has quite a lot more gain, so I thought to really test whether these things sound as similar as I'm thinking they do, I put it into like a Vox preset, brighter than I normally would use. This one actually does respond really nicely to picking dynamics, but let me know which do you prefer out of this and the ES335, I mean.